Han Solo wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the massive pipe he had just fixed. The metal was old, older than most buildings on Earth, but the Veltarans built things to last. He had been working in the crystalline palace for 3 years now, and he still found himself amazed by the architecture. The walls sparkled like diamonds, and the ceilings stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside the great halls. "Human! You finished yet?" a sharp voice called out. Han Solo turned to see Guard Captain Relthor standing behind him, his crystalline wings folded against his back. The Veltaran looked down at Han Solo with barely hidden disgust. "The Queen's Council meeting is in 1 hour. These pipes must be silent." Han Solo nodded. "All done, Captain." "No more rattling." Relthor clicked his mandibles in what Han Solo had learned was their version of a dismissive laugh. "I still do not understand why we hire humans for palace work. Your kind is so soft, so weak. One of our younglings could do your job better." Han Solo said nothing. He had heard worse in his 3 years here. The Veltarans were an old species, ruling over 47 star systems. They saw humans as newcomers, barely worthy of notice. Earth had only joined the galactic community 20 years ago, and humans were still proving themselves. He packed his tools and walked through the service corridors toward the maintenance office. The palace was enormous, with thousands of rooms and hundreds of workers. Most were Veltarans, but there were a few dozen humans scattered throughout the lower positions. Janitors, technicians, kitchen helpers. No human had ever been trusted with an important role here. "Han Solo, wait up!" a voice called behind him. He turned to see Nari jogging toward him, her tablet tucked under her arm. Nari was one of the few humans who worked in the upper levels of the palace. She was a xenobiologist, studying Veltaran culture and history in the royal archives. "Rough day?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "Same as always. Fixed a pipe, got insulted, fixed another pipe." He smiled tiredly. "How about you?" Nari's face grew serious. "I need to talk to you about something. Not here. Can we meet in the garden after your shift?" Han Solo felt a chill run down his spine. Nari was usually cheerful, always excited about some new discovery in the archives. He had never seen her look this worried. "Sure. Give me an hour to clean up." The palace gardens were beautiful at sunset. The twin suns of Veltara painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Han Solo found Nari sitting by a fountain, staring at her tablet with a deep frown. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. She looked around to make sure they were alone. "I've been reading classified reports in the archives, old ones from before humans were allowed access. Han Solo, there's going to be a war." "What? With who?" "The Krethic swarm. They're a rival insect species from the Outer Rim. They've been quiet for 50 years, but intelligence reports show they've been building a massive fleet. The Queen knows, the military knows, but they're keeping it quiet to avoid panic." Han Solo felt his stomach drop. "How bad is it?" "Bad. The Krethic are ruthless. Last time they went to war, they destroyed 3 colony worlds completely. They don't take prisoners, Han Solo. They don't negotiate." She looked at him with frightened eyes. "If they attack, this palace will be a primary target. The Queen is the heart of the Empire." "Does the Queen have a plan? The Silver Talons will protect her, right?" Nari laughed bitterly. "The Silver Talons? You mean those arrogant guards who spend more time polishing their armor than training?" "I've read the historical records, Han Solo. The last time the palace was threatened, 200 years ago, the royal guard fled. They left the old queen to die. That can't be right. They're supposed to be elite warriors sworn to die for the throne." "Sworn, yes. But words are easy. I just wanted to warn you. If something happens, don't try to be a hero. Get to the evacuation ships and get out. Promise me." Han Solo promised, but he felt uneasy as he walked back to his quarters that night. He had come to Veltara after Earth's civil wars, looking for a place where honor still meant something. The Veltarans talked endlessly about duty, loyalty, and sacrifice. Their culture was built on these ideals. Could Nari really be right about the Silver Talons? He thought about his brother, Wu Jin. They had served together in Earth's planetary defense force during the Civil Wars. Their unit had been ordered to hold a bridge against rebel forces, but when the fighting got heavy, their commander had ordered a retreat, abandoning civilians on the other side. Wu Jin had died trying to help those civilians escape. Han Sol had carried that guilt for 10 years. 3 days later, Han Sol was deep in the maintenance tunnels beneath the palace when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed along the walls, and an automated voice began repeating in Veltaran, "Emergency! All personnel to evacuation stations! This is not a drill!" Han Sol's communicator buzzed. "All maintenance staff, seal the lower tunnels immediately and report to Evacuation Bay 7. Move fast!" His hands shook as he activated the tunnel seals. Massive blast doors slammed shut, one after another, securing the underground passages. The voice on the communicator sounded panicked, which terrified him more than anything. Veltarans never panicked. He ran toward the nearest elevator, his tool bag bouncing against his hip. Other workers rushed past him, some crying, some praying in their native languages. When he reached the main floor, he saw chaos. Palace guards were running, not in formation, but in blind panic. Servants pushed and shoved toward the exits. Through the crystal windows, Han Sol could see ships falling from the sky, burning as they crashed into the city below. Explosions shook the palace, and cracks appeared in the diamond-like walls. "Han Sol!" Nari grabbed his arm, her face pale. "We have to go now. The Krethik broke through the defense fleet. They're landing troops in the gardens." "Where's the Queen?" "Forget about the Queen. The Silver Talons will protect her. We need to save ourselves." But as they ran toward the evacuation bay, Han Sol saw something that made him stop dead. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw Commander Velthos, the leader of the Silver Talons himself, running toward the exits. Behind him, dozens of royal guards were fleeing, their ceremonial weapons abandoned on the floor. A young Veltaran aide grabbed the commander's arm. "Sir, the Queen! She's trapped in the throne room! The escape tunnel collapsed!" Commander Velthos shook him off. "The Queen is lost! We must save ourselves to rebuild the Empire! Move, soldier!" The entire royal guard, every single Silver Talon, ran past Han Sol toward the evacuation ships. Not one of them turned back. Nari pulled at his arm. "Han Sol, come on! There's nothing we can do!" But Han Sol wasn't listening. He was thinking about Wu Jin, about the bridge, about all the times he had wished he could go back and make a different choice. He pulled his arm free from Nari's grip. "Where are you going?" she screamed. "Someone has to stay," he said quietly. Then he turned and ran toward the throne room, alone. Han Sol ran through the palace corridors as everyone else ran away from them. The sounds of battle grew louder with each step. Explosions shook the walls, and he could hear the terrible screeching sounds that must be the Krethik warriors. His heart pounded so hard it hurt, but he kept moving. The throne room was in the heart of the palace, protected by 3 layers of security doors. All of them stood open, abandoned by the guards who should have sealed them. Han Sol passed through each checkpoint, his maintenance badge still working on the scanners. The system had not been shut down properly in the panic. When he reached the final door, he had to stop and catch his breath. His hands were shaking. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to turn around, to run, to save himself. He was an engineer, not a soldier. He had no weapons, no armor, no training for this kind of fight. What could he possibly do against an army? He thought of Wu Jin again. His brother had not been a hero. He had just been a man who refused to run when others needed him. Maybe that was all heroism ever was. Han Sol pushed open the throne room door. The room was massive, with ceilings that rose 100 feet high. Crystal pillars supported arched doorways on 3 sides. In the center, on a throne made of some kind of luminous stone, sat Queen Elovs. She was the most beautiful and terrifying being Han Sol had ever seen. She stood 8 feet tall, with crystalline wings that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Her exoskeleton was deep blue, almost black, and her eyes were multifaceted like jewels. She radiated power and authority, even now, even alone. When she saw Han Sol, her eyes widened in shock. "You, the maintenance human, what are you doing here?" "Your Majesty, I came to help." His voice sounded small in the huge room. "Help?" She stood from her throne, her wings spreading slightly. "Where are my guards? Where are the silver talons?" Han Sol could not meet her eyes. "They ran, Your Majesty. All of them. Commander Velthos said you were lost, and they needed to save themselves." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. Then she made a sound that Han Sol had never heard a Veltaran make. It was like glass breaking, like wind through empty halls. She was laughing, but there was no humor in it. "Of course they did. Of course." She turned away from him, looking at her throne. The silver talons, centuries of tradition, of proud service, of sacred oaths. And when death finally came for them, they chose life instead. "Your Majesty, we need to get you out of here. Is there another exit?" "The escape tunnel collapsed in the bombardment. I am trapped here, human, and soon the Krethic will come through those doors and kill me. You should leave while you can." "No, Your Majesty." She turned back to him, her head tilting in that bird-like way Veltarans had when confused. "No? You dare refuse a royal command?" "With respect, Your Majesty, I did not come here just to leave you to die. I came to help you survive. You are one human, an engineer. You have no weapons, no armor. What can you possibly do?" Han Sol set down his tool bag and started walking around the room, examining the walls, the doors, the ceiling. "I can think. I can build. I can make this room into a fortress instead of a tomb. The Krethic will be here in minutes. Then we better work fast." For a moment, the Queen just stared at him. Then, to his surprise, she laughed again. This time it sounded more real. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human." "Probably both, Your Majesty." "My name is Elovs. If we are going to die together, you may use it. I'm Han Sol, and we're not going to die. Not today." He opened his tool bag and pulled out his scanner. The throne room had been built centuries ago, back when the Veltarans expected their palace to be attacked. There should be defensive systems built into the walls. "Elovs, do you know if this room has automated defenses?" "Yes, plasma turrets in the pillars, but they have not been maintained in decades. My predecessors thought them unnecessary relics. Can you access the control systems?" "I am the Queen. I can access anything in this palace." "Then start activating them while I check the power relays. Even if they're old, we might be able to get a few shots out of them." Elovs moved to a panel hidden in her throne. Her long fingers flew across the controls with surprising speed. Han Sol ran to the nearest pillar and pried open the maintenance hatch. Inside, he found ancient power cables and targeting systems covered in dust. "The main defense network is offline," Elovs called out. "It requires authorization codes that were lost a century ago. Then we hardwire it. I can bypass the network and connect the turrets directly to your throne controls. It will be manual targeting, but it will work." "You can do that?" "I fix things for a living, Your Majesty. This is just a really complicated pipe." Despite everything, despite the approaching army and the certainty of death, Elovs laughed. They worked together in desperate silence. Han Sol stripped cables and rerouted power, while Elovs decoded the ancient targeting systems. He discovered that she knew more about engineering than he expected. When he mentioned it, she made a clicking sound of embarrassment. "Queens are expected to be above such common knowledge. But I always loved understanding how things worked. I would sneak into the engineering bays as a child and watch the technicians. That's going to save our lives today, Han Sol said. He got 3 of the 8 turrets working before they heard the sounds from the eastern corridor. Screeching, clicking, and the heavy thud of many feet. The Krethik were coming. Han Sol pulled out everything from his tool bag. Welding torches, plasma cutters, emergency sealant canisters, even some explosive charges he used for controlled demolitions in the tunnels. He quickly rigged the charges to the door frames, creating improvised mines. "How many will come first?" he asked. "The Krethik attack in waves. First wave will be 6 to 8 warriors. They test defenses before committing their main forces." "Good. We can handle 6. Han Sol, they are 7 feet tall and armored like tanks. They have been bred for war for thousands of years. We cannot handle 6. "We can try." He positioned himself near the eastern door, plasma cutter in hand. It was meant for cutting metal, not fighting. But the temperature was high enough to hurt anything. Ilovs stood at her throne, her hands on the turret controls. "Why did you stay?" she asked quietly. "You owe me nothing. Humans are treated poorly in my empire. I have done nothing to earn this loyalty from you." Han Sol thought about his answer. "My brother died because his commander ran when he should have stayed. I ran with them that day. I saved my own life and lost my brother. I've lived with that for 10 years. Maybe I can't fix what I did wrong, but I can do right today." "Your brother was a soldier?" "He was a cook. But when people needed help, he helped them. That's what made him better than all of us who carried guns." The eastern door exploded inward. 6 Krethik warriors poured through the smoke, their black carapaces gleaming, their mandibles dripping with venom. They were nightmares made real, moving impossibly fast on their 6 legs. Han Sol pressed the detonator. The explosion killed 2 of them instantly, their bodies thrown backward by the blast. Ilovs activated the turrets and plasma bolts filled the air. Another Krethik fell, its armor cracked and burning. But 3 were still coming. Han Sol ran forward, his plasma cutter held out like a sword. A Krethik warrior swung a massive blade at him, and he barely ducked under it. The heat from the cutter melted through the warrior's leg joint, and it collapsed with a scream. Another grabbed him from behind, lifting him off the ground. Its mandibles moved toward his head, ready to bite down. Then Ilovs was there, her crystalline wings spread wide, her own claws tearing at the warrior's eyes. Together, they brought it down. The last Krethik warrior backed toward the door, making a strange clicking sound. A retreat signal, Han Sol realized. It wanted to warn the others. Ilovs fired the turret, and the warrior fell. The throne room went quiet except for their heavy breathing. Han Sol looked at the bodies scattered across the beautiful floor. "First wave down," he said. "How long until the second?" "Minutes, maybe less." Ilovs looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "We survived." "We did. Now let's get ready for the next wave." They worked even faster this time, knowing that harder battles were coming. The second wave came 10 minutes later, and they were ready. Han Sol had rigged more explosive traps at all 3 entrances and gotten 2 more turrets working. Ilovs had found her way into the palace security network and was now watching the Krethik movements on her throne display. 12 warriors approached this time, 4 from each entrance. "They're spreading out to divide our fire," she said. "Smart." "We focus on one entrance at a time. Let the traps handle the others for as long as possible." The southern entrance exploded first. The Krethik had triggered the trap early, and 3 of their warriors died in the blast. But the 4th kept coming, followed by another wave behind it. Han Sol threw a canister of emergency sealant. It exploded on impact, covering 2 warriors in hardening foam. They shrieked and clawed at the substance, but it set like concrete in seconds. Ilovs fired the turrets, methodical and precise, and both trapped warriors fell. The eastern entrance breached next. Han Sol ran to meet them, plasma cutter in one hand and a welding torch in the other. The first warrior threw was massive, bigger than the others, with thick armor plates across its chest. Han Solo's cutter barely scratched it. The warrior's blade came down in a deadly arc. Han Solo rolled sideways, feeling the wind from the strike. He slashed at the warrior's legs, but the armor was too thick. The warrior kicked him, and he flew backward, hitting a pillar hard enough to see stars. Ilovs left the throne controls and threw herself at the warrior. Her crystalline wings were not just for show, they had sharp edges like razors. She sliced at the warrior's joints, finding the weak points Han Solo had missed. Together they brought down the armored giant. But while they fought, 3 more warriors came through the western entrance. "Han Solo, behind you!" Ilovs screamed. He turned just in time to see a Krethic blade coming for his head. He brought up his torch instinctively, and the blade hit it with a shower of sparks. The impact knocked the torch from his hand, and he found himself facing 2 warriors with only his plasma cutter. Time seemed to slow down. Han Solo saw every detail, the venom dripping from their mandibles, the hatred in their compound eyes, the way they moved to surround him. He was going to die. He had bought Ilovs some time, but now his luck had run out. Then something unexpected happened. The throne room's main lights went out, plunging them into darkness. But Ilovs's crystalline wings began to glow, bright and beautiful, lighting the room with soft blue radiance. The Krethic hesitated, confused by the sudden change. Ilovs used that moment. She activated all 5 working turrets at once, firing in a pattern that swept across the room. The Krethic warriors scrambled for cover, their attack broken. Han Solo used the confusion to grab his welding torch and retreat to Ilovs's side. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "Bruised but alive." He checked his equipment. He was running low on explosive charges and sealant. "We can't keep this up forever. The 3rd wave will be larger. They will learn from their mistakes. Then we need to change our strategy. Can you access the environmental controls?" "Yes, but why?" Her eyes widened with understanding. "The temperature. Krethic are cold-blooded. If we lower the temperature, we slow them down." "Exactly." Ilovs returned to her throne and worked the controls. Within minutes, Han Solo could see his breath in the air. The throne room became cold, then colder, then freezing. Ilovs seemed unaffected, but Han Solo's fingers started going numb. "Is this too cold for you?" she asked with concern. "I'll manage. Better cold than dead." The 3rd wave came an hour later. 15 warriors this time, moving slower in the freezing air. Han Solo's traps and the turrets took down 6 before they reached the throne, but 9 still came, and he was exhausted and freezing. The battle became a blur of movement and pain. Han Solo fought with empty hands when his tools ran out, using the bodies of fallen Krethic as shields. Ilovs fought beside him, her movements becoming slower as she used up her energy. They covered each other's weaknesses, moved as one, survived by pure determination. When the last warrior fell, they collapsed together against the throne, too tired to speak. "How long have we been fighting?" Han Solo asked. 4 hours. "It feels like days." Ilovs looked at him with her jeweled eyes. "Why are humans so stubborn? Any reasonable being would have fled or surrendered by now." "Maybe humans aren't reasonable." He managed a tired smile. "Or maybe we're just too stupid to know when we're beaten. That stupidity is keeping me alive." They sat in silence for a while, catching their breath. The throne room was a disaster. Scorch marks on the walls, bodies everywhere, blood and strange alien fluids pooling on the floor. But they were still alive. "Tell me about your brother," Ilovs said quietly. "Wu Jin. You said his name was?" Han Solo was surprised by the question. Queens did not usually care about the personal lives of their servants, but maybe this was not a normal day, and they were not really queen and servant anymore. They were just 2 people trying to survive together. "He was younger than me by 3 years, always happy, always making jokes. He joined the defense force because I did, even though he was a terrible shot. They made him a cook instead." Han Sol smiled at the memory. He complained about it constantly, but his food was amazing. "What happened at the bridge?" "Rebels were pushing civilians across, trying to get them to safety. Our unit was supposed to hold until the evacuation was complete, but there were too many rebels, too many guns. Our commander panicked and ordered a retreat." Han Sol's voice grew hollow. "I followed orders. I ran. Wu Jin stayed to buy time for the civilians. He died holding that bridge." "You were following orders. That is what soldiers do." "Following orders doesn't make it right. Those civilians needed us. Wu Jin knew that. He was braver than all of us." Ilovs was quiet for a moment. "The Silver Talons followed their training too. They followed Commander Velthos when he ordered retreat. By your logic, they are not cowards." "No, Your Majesty. There's a difference. My commander was trying to save our lives. Velthos was only trying to save his own." "You have a sharp mind for someone who fixes pipes." Before Han Sol could respond, his communicator buzzed. He had forgotten he was still wearing it. Nari's voice crackled through, weak and distorted by interference. Han Sol, are you alive? Please respond." He grabbed the communicator. "Nari, I'm here. I'm with the Queen." "Oh, thank goodness, I thought—" Her voice caught. "Never mind. Listen, I need to tell you something important. I hacked into the Palace Defense Network from the archives. I know why the Krethic are so focused on the throne room." "Why?" "The Queen has genetic codes in her neural structure, codes that can control the entire Veltaran fleet. If the Krethic capture her alive, they can disable every warship in the Empire. They need her alive, Han Sol. That's why they're sending waves instead of just destroying the throne room." Han Sol looked at Ilovs, who had clearly heard every word. Her face was unreadable. "How long until the defense fleet arrives?" he asked. 2 hours. The Admiral is coming with everything he has, but they were scattered across the system. 2 hours, Han Sol. Can you hold that long?" He looked around the throne room. His tools were almost gone. The turrets were failing. He and Ilovs were wounded and exhausted, and the Krethic would keep coming wave after wave until they broke through. "We'll find a way," he said. "Han Sol, there's something else. The evacuation ships can see the palace from orbit. They're watching on their scanners. Everyone can see that you stayed. The guards who ran, the servants who fled, they're all watching you fight. I don't care about that. But you should. You're changing something here. I can hear it in how people are talking. A human maintenance worker is defending the Queen while the Silver Talons ran. People are ashamed, Han Sol. Some of them want to come back. Tell them to stay away. This is a death trap." Too late. Some humans are already coming. They found weapons. They're coming to help you. Han Sol felt something strange in his chest. Not fear this time, but something warmer. Hope, maybe. Or just gratitude that he would not die alone. "How many?" 12 humans so far. More might follow." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Okay. Tell them to come through the maintenance tunnels. I'll unseal the northern access. But Nari, make sure they know what they're walking into." "They know. They're coming anyway." The communicator went silent. The northern maintenance tunnel opened with a grinding sound. Han Sol stood at the entrance, plasma cutter ready, not sure what to expect. If the Krethic had found this tunnel, they were finished. But it was humans who came through. Sung Ho emerged first, carrying a plasma rifle he must have taken from a dead guard. He was a cargo handler, built like a mountain with gentle eyes that now held a hard determination. Behind him came Ji-Woo, a kitchen worker who Han Sol had shared meals with many times. She carried 2 rifles and a bag of power cells. Others followed. Taemin, the janitor, Bo-Ra from the communications office, Hyejin, who worked in the gardens. 12 humans total, none of them soldiers, all of them terrified but coming anyway. "Are you people insane?" Han Sol said, but he was smiling. Sung Ho grinned back. "Probably. We heard you were having a party and didn't invite us." "This is not a party, this is a tomb." "Then we'll make it a fortress instead." Sung Ho looked past Han Sol and saw Queen Ilav's standing behind him. His eyes went wide and he immediately tried to bow. "No time for ceremony," Ilav said, her voice firm but kind. "If you are here to help, then welcome. If you are here to die, I order you to leave." "We're here to help, Your Majesty," Jiwoo said. "We brought weapons and whatever supplies we could carry." The humans spread out through the throne room, their faces showing shock at the carnage. Bodies were everywhere. The beautiful crystal floor was cracked and stained, and the air smelled of death and burnt metal. "How have you held this long?" Bo-Ra asked, staring at Han Sol and the Queen. "Stubbornness," Han Sol replied, "and some very old turrets. But we're running out of tricks. The Krethik will send more warriors soon, and these waves are just going to get bigger." "Then we make every shot count," Sung Ho said. He distributed the rifles among those who knew how to use them. "Most of us have basic training from Earth. We're not Marines, but we can shoot straight." Ilavs watched them with an expression Han Sol could not read. "Why did you come back? You were safe on the evacuation ships." The humans looked at each other. Finally, Hyejin spoke. "Because we were ashamed, Your Majesty. We ran while Han Sol stayed. That's not who we want to be. You owe me nothing. I have never treated humans with the respect you deserve." "Maybe not," Timon said quietly. "But Han Sol stayed anyway. That says something about him, not about you. We're not here for you, Your Majesty, no offense. We're here for him." Han Sol felt his face grow hot. "I don't need—" "Yes, you do," Jiwoo interrupted. "You're an idiot, Han Sol. A brave idiot, but still an idiot. You can't fight an army alone. So now you have help whether you want it or not." Before Han Sol could argue, the alarms started again. The Krethik were coming. "Positions!" Sung Ho shouted. The humans scattered to the 3 entrances, rifles ready. Han Sol quickly explained the defensive positions and which turrets still worked. Ilavs returned to her throne controls. This wave was different. 20 warriors came through all 3 entrances at once, coordinated and fast. But now Han Sol had help. The plasma rifles lit up the throne room with bright blue bolts. The humans fired in controlled bursts, just like they had been taught in basic training years ago. It was not enough to stop the Krethik, but it slowed them down. The warriors had to take cover, had to think about their approach. Han Sol coordinated the defense, shouting orders while fighting alongside them. "Taemin, watch your left. Bo-Ra, save your ammunition. Short bursts." Sung Ho fought like a demon, using his strength to physically tackle a warrior and wrestle its weapon away. Jiwoo covered him with precise rifle fire. They moved as a team, protecting each other, but the Krethik were too many. 3 warriors broke through the eastern entrance and charged straight for the throne. Ilavs stood to face them, her wings spread, but she was tired and wounded from hours of fighting. Han Sol threw himself between her and the warriors. His plasma cutter met the first warrior's blade with a shower of sparks. The second warrior's strike cut across his shoulder, and he felt hot blood running down his arm. The third warrior's mandibles snapped at his throat. Then Sung Ho was there. Slamming into the warrior with his full weight, they went down together in a tangle of limbs. The warrior's blade flashed, and Sung Ho screamed. "No!" Han Sol brought his cutter down on the warrior's head, killing it. But Sung Ho lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Jiwoo ran to him, her face white with shock. "Sung Ho, stay with me!" The big man smiled up at her. "Did we win?" "Not yet, you idiot! Don't you die on me!" Wasn't planning on it. But his eyes were already closing. The battle raged on. More Krethik came, and more humans fell. Hyejin took a blade to her leg and went down screaming. Bo-Ra used her last power cell and resorted to fighting with a piece of broken pipe. The throne room became a nightmare of blood and death. But somehow they held. When the 20th warrior fell, there was a moment of terrible silence. "Count off," Han Sol said, his voice hoarse. "Who's still standing?" 9 voices answered. They had lost 3. Sung Ho was badly wounded but alive. Hye Jin was conscious but could not walk. One human, a young man named Dae Ho, who worked in the stables, did not answer at all. Han Sol found him near the western entrance, his body already cold. "I didn't even know him well," Jiwoo said, tears running down her face. "We ate lunch together once. He told me about his family back on Earth. He wanted to save enough money to bring them here." "He died a hero," Ilovs said quietly. She had come to stand beside them. "His name will be remembered." "Will it?" Jiwoo's voice was bitter. "By who? The guards who ran, the servants who fled. Who will remember him?" "I will," Ilovs said. "I swear it on my throne. Every human who fought here today will be honored. Their names will be carved in the palace walls beside the greatest warriors of my people." Han Sol checked his communicator. "Nari, how much longer?" 90 minutes. The defense fleet is burning their engines to get here faster. Just hold on, Han Sol. Please hold on." "We will." But privately, he was not sure. They had used most of their ammunition. The turrets were failing one by one. His shoulder wound was getting worse, and he could barely lift his arm. The humans were exhausted, wounded, running on pure determination, and nothing else. "They will send their war leader next," Ilovs said. "The Krethik never send their leadership until they are certain of victory. If we have hurt them badly enough, Warlord Kresnak will come himself to finish this." "Can we beat him?" "He is a legend among the Krethik. He has destroyed 3 colony worlds and killed 2 queens with his own claws. No, Han Sol, we cannot beat him." "Then we make him pay as much as possible." Ilovs touched his uninjured shoulder, a gesture of respect among her people. "Why do humans never surrender? Why do you fight even when logic says you should quit?" Han Sol thought about it. "Because surrender is a choice. As long as we can still choose to fight, we're not beaten. Maybe we die anyway, but at least we die on our own terms." "Your species is very strange." "Thank you, Your Majesty." She laughed. That glass-breaking sound that he had learned meant she was genuinely amused. "You may call me Ilovs. I think we are beyond formality now." "Then call me Han Sol. Just Han Sol." They stood together, looking at the remaining humans who were checking weapons and binding wounds. Jiwoo knelt beside Sung Ho, holding his hand. Bo-Ra was teaching Tai-Min how to reload a rifle properly. Hye Jin sat against a pillar, her leg bandaged, still gripping a weapon. "They came back for you," Ilovs said. "They were safe, and they came back because they believed in you. They came back because they're good people who made a hard choice. No, they came back because you showed them what courage looks like. You stood when everyone else ran. You gave them something to believe in." Han Sol did not know what to say to that. He was just a maintenance worker who had made a choice. He was not special, not a hero. He was just a man who could not run anymore. The northern entrance exploded inward with a deafening roar. The blast was so powerful it knocked everyone off their feet. When the smoke cleared, a figure stood in the doorway. Warlord Kresnak was enormous, easily 9 feet tall, with armor that looked like it had been forged from black steel. His eyes glowed red, and his mandibles were stained with old blood. Behind him stood 12 elite warriors, each bearing weapons that hummed with energy. The warlord looked around the throne room, seeing the bodies of his warriors scattered everywhere. His gaze settled on Han Sol and Ilovs. "Impressive," he said in perfect Veltaran language. "You have killed many of my soldiers, Queen. But your time has ended. Surrender now, and I will let your defenders live." "Liar," Ilovs said. The Krethic do not take prisoners. True, but I can make their deaths quick instead of slow. That is mercy in its way. Hansol stepped forward, his plasma cutter in his good hand. She's not surrendering. Neither are we. The warlord's eyes fixed on him. A human? I have heard stories about your kind. Weak, soft, barely worth notice. Yet you stand before me without fear. I'm terrified, Hansol admitted. But I'm standing anyway. Warlord Kresnak laughed, a terrible grinding sound. You have courage, human. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. I will kill you first, so you do not have to watch your queen die. Talk is cheap, Sung Ho called out from where he lay. Despite his wounds, he had managed to grip a rifle. If you want them, come and take them. The warlord's eyes narrowed. So many humans. Why do you throw your lives away for a queen who has never valued your species? Because someone has to, Jiwoo said simply. Because it's the right thing to do. Right and wrong are concepts for poets and children. There is only strength and weakness, victory and defeat. The warlord raised one massive claw. You choose defeat, so be it. The elite warriors charged. The throne room exploded into chaos. The humans fired everything they had, but the elite warriors were different from the others. They moved faster, their armor was thicker, and they fought with terrible skill. Within seconds, 2 more humans fell. Hansol found himself facing the warlord directly. His plasma cutter seemed like a toy compared to the warlord's massive sword. The first strike came so fast he barely saw it. He dodged, and the blade buried itself in the floor where he had stood. The second strike caught him across the chest, cutting through his work jacket and scoring the skin beneath. Pain exploded through him, but he stayed on his feet. He slashed with the cutter, aiming for the warlord's joints. The warlord blocked easily and kicked him backward. Hansol crashed into a pillar, feeling something crack in his ribs. He could taste blood in his mouth. The warlord advanced slowly, savoring the moment. You have fought well, human, but you are just a maintenance worker. I am a warrior born. You cannot win. Probably not, Hansol agreed, climbing back to his feet. But I can slow you down. He threw his plasma cutter at the warlord's face. The warlord swatted it away contemptuously, but it bought Hansol a second. He grabbed the emergency sealant canister from his belt and threw it. The canister exploded against the warlord's chest, covering him in hardening foam. The warlord roared in anger, clawing at the substance. It would not hold him long, but it held him long enough. Ilovs activated the last working turret. The plasma bolt hit the warlord from behind, burning through the foam and scorching his armor. He stumbled forward, and Hansol saw his chance. He grabbed a fallen warrior's blade and drove it into the gap in the warlord's armor at his leg joint. The warlord screamed and backhanded Hansol across the room. He hit the floor and did not get up. Hansol! Ilovs left the throne controls and ran to him. Around them, the battle still raged. The humans were falling back, overwhelmed by the elite warriors. Bo-Ra went down fighting. Taemin covered her body with his own and died seconds later. Leave me, Hansol whispered. Blood ran from his mouth. Save yourself. No. Ilovs' voice was fierce. You did not leave me. I will not leave you. The warlord pulled the blade from his leg, his face twisted with rage. You think you have won because you made me bleed? I have bled in 100 battles. I am death itself. I am... The wall exploded, not from a weapon, but from a cargo transport crashing through it. The ship was on fire, its engines screaming, and it slammed into 3 of the elite warriors, crushing them instantly. The transport's door opened, and more humans poured out. Not just a few, but dozens. They came carrying weapons, carrying medical supplies, carrying determination. Sorry we're late, someone shouted. Traffic was terrible. Nari was there, leading them, her face set in determined lines. The fleet is 5 minutes out. Hold the line. The fresh humans threw themselves at the elite warriors with desperate courage. They were janitors and engineers, kitchen staff and clerks, but they fought like heroes. The battle turned into a swirling melee. Jiwoo found Hansol and Ilavs. "Can you move?" "Barely," Hansol admitted. "Then barely will have to be enough. We need to fall back to a more defensible position." But the warlord would not let them retreat. He fought through the humans like they were nothing, his rage making him unstoppable. 5 humans died trying to slow him down. 10 more were wounded. "Enough!" Ilav stood between the warlord and the humans. "This is between you and me, Kresenak. Let them go." "No." The warlord's voice was cold. "They chose to stand with you. They die with you. Then I challenge you. Single combat. If I win, you withdraw. If you win, I surrender myself peacefully." The warlord laughed. "You are wounded and exhausted. You cannot beat me." "Maybe not. But honor demands you accept the challenge, or do the Krethik no longer care about honor?" The warlord's mandibles clicked in anger. She had trapped him. If he refused, he would look weak before his own warriors. If he accepted, he risked defeat. "Very well, single combat, but when I win, I will make your death last hours." Hansol tried to stand, to protest, but Jiwoo held him down. "Don't! This is her choice." Ilavs looked back at Hansol one last time. "Thank you for showing me what true courage looks like." Then she turned to face the warlord. They circled each other slowly. The warlord was bigger, stronger, and less wounded. But Ilavs was faster, and she knew the throne room better than he did. She used the pillars as cover, forcing him to chase her, wearing him down. The warlord's blade crashed against her wing, cracking the crystalline structure. She screamed, but did not fall. Her claws found his throat, drawing blood. He grabbed her and threw her across the room. Ilavs hit the floor hard, but rolled to her feet. The warlord charged, his sword raised for a killing blow. Hansol saw what was about to happen, saw that the warlord would win, saw that Ilavs would die. He could not let that happen. With the last of his strength, Hansol pushed himself to his feet. He grabbed a rifle from a fallen human and fired. The bolt hit the warlord's wounded leg, the same spot where Hansol had stabbed him earlier. The warlord stumbled. "That is against the rules of challenge!" the warlord roared. "I don't care about your rules," Hansol said. The warlord turned from Ilavs and charged at Hansol instead. There was murder in his eyes. He would kill this insolent human slowly, painfully. But Ilavs was behind him now, and the throne room was her home. She knew where every panel was, every control, every hidden mechanism. Her hand slammed down on an ancient emergency control that no one had used in centuries. The floor beneath the warlord opened up. He fell screaming into the maintenance tunnels far below. The sound of his body hitting the bottom echoed through the throne room. The remaining elite warriors looked at each other. Their leader was dead. The queen still stood. They had lost. "Withdraw," one of them said in the Krethik language. "The challenge is finished. We have no honor in continuing this fight." They left, carrying their wounded, leaving their dead behind. The throne room fell silent except for the moans of the wounded and the crackling of flames. Hansol collapsed. He had nothing left. His body was broken. His mind was numb, and he could not feel his legs anymore. "Stay awake," Nari said, kneeling beside him. "The medical ships are landing now. You're going to be fine." "Sung Ho?" he asked. "Alive. Jiwoo got him stabilized." "How many did we lose?" Nari's face fell. 14 humans died defending this room. Daeho, Bora, Taemin, and 11 others. Hansol closed his eyes. 14 people who had come back because of him. 14 lives that were his responsibility. "They chose to come," Ilev said, appearing above him. Her wing was broken and her armor was cracked, but she was alive. "You did not force them. They chose courage over safety. That is the greatest honor anyone can achieve." I just wanted to do the right thing, Han Sol whispered. You did more than that. You changed everything. Medical teams were flooding into the throne room now, not just Veltaran doctors but human ones too. They worked together, treating the wounded without distinction. Han Sol felt gentle hands lifting him onto a stretcher. Will he live? He heard Ilav's ask. Yes, Your Majesty. He's badly hurt, but he'll recover. Good. I have plans for him. Han Sol wanted to ask what plans, but darkness was pulling at him. He let it take him, finally able to rest. Outside the palace, the Veltaran defense fleet arrived and drove away the remaining Krethic forces. The battle for the crystalline palace was over, but the story of what happened in that throne room was just beginning. Han Sol woke up 2 months later in a room he did not recognize. The ceiling was made of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across white walls. Medical equipment surrounded his bed, some of it human technology, some Veltaran. Through a large window, he could see the palace gardens, now being rebuilt after the battle. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest and shoulder. Easy there, hero. Nari appeared beside his bed, pushing him gently back down. You broke 3 ribs, fractured your shoulder, lost a lot of blood, and had internal bleeding. The doctors say you're lucky to be alive. How long have I been out? 8 weeks. They kept you sedated while your body healed. Modern medicine is amazing, but even it needs time. She smiled, but her eyes were sad. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a transport. He looked around the room again. Where am I? The Royal Medical Wing. The Queen insisted. You're in the same section where they treat members of the royal family. Han Sol blinked in confusion. That can't be right. I'm just a maintenance worker. Not anymore, you're not. Han Sol, everything has changed since the battle. The whole Empire knows what happened. You're famous. Famous? Nari pulled out her tablet and showed him. The screen was filled with news reports, videos, and articles. All of them were about the Battle of the Throne Room, about the human who stayed when the guards ran, about the workers who came back to fight beside him. The evacuation ships recorded everything, Nari explained. Every ship had sensors watching the palace. They saw the silver talons flee. They saw you go back. They saw the other humans follow you. The whole Empire watched you fight for hours to protect the Queen. Han Sol felt sick. Sung Ho? Ji Woo? The others? Sung Ho is alive. He lost a lot of blood and had to have surgery, but he's recovering in the next room. Ji Woo visits him every day. She barely leaves his side. Nari's smile faded. We lost 14, like I told you. But 32 humans fought in that throne room, and 18 survived. The ones who died, their families, the Queen has taken care of everything. Their families have been given citizenship in the Empire, financial support, and their names have been carved in the palace walls. There's going to be a memorial garden built in their honor. Han Sol closed his eyes. 14 people dead because he had inspired them to follow him into a battle they could not win. The weight of it was crushing. Hey! Nari took his hand. I know what you're thinking. Stop it. Those people made their own choices. They came back because they wanted to, because you showed them that courage matters, that loyalty matters. You gave them something to believe in. I got them killed. No, they got themselves honored. Every one of them is being called a hero across 47 star systems. Their names will be remembered forever. That's more than most people ever get. Before Han Sol could respond, the door opened. Queen Ilavs entered, and Nari immediately bowed and left the room. Ilavs looked different. Her broken wing had healed, though he could see where the crystal had been repaired. She wore simpler robes than before, without all the ceremonial decorations. She looked more real somehow, more approachable. Han Sol, it is good to see you awake. Your Majesty. He tried to bow from the bed and failed. Please, do not hurt yourself further." She pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people who had fought together and survived. "I came to thank you," she said finally, "and to apologize." Apologize? For what? For 300 years, my family has ruled this empire on a foundation of lies. We told everyone that the Silver Talons were the bravest warriors in the galaxy. We told them that honor and duty were the highest virtues. We built a culture around these ideas. She looked away. But when death came, our greatest warriors ran. They abandoned me without hesitation. You, a human we had treated as lesser, stayed instead. I just did what felt right. That is exactly my point. You did not stay because of tradition or duty or orders. You stayed because your character demanded it. That is true honor, Han Solo. Not the performance of it, but the reality. What happened to Commander Velthos and the Silver Talons? Ilov's face hardened. I dissolved the Silver Talons completely. Every member has been stripped of their rank and position. Commander Velthos is in prison, awaiting trial for abandonment of duty. Some of the others have fled to outer colonies in shame. That seems harsh. Harsh. They swore sacred oaths to protect the throne with their lives. When the moment came, they chose their own lives instead. What is the point of oaths if we do not enforce them? Han Solo could not argue with that logic. I am creating a new royal guard, Ilovs continued. The Crimson Shield. It will not be based on birthright or species or tradition. It will be based on character, on courage, on the willingness to stand when others run. She looked at him intently. I want you to command it. Han Solo laughed, then winced as his ribs complained. Your Majesty, I'm an engineer, not a soldier. I don't know the first thing about commanding a military unit. You commanded 30 humans in a desperate battle and held against impossible odds. You made decisions under pressure, protected your people, and never gave up. That is leadership, Han Solo. I just reacted. I didn't have a plan. The best leaders adapt to circumstances rather than following rigid plans. You proved that. She leaned forward. But if you truly do not want to command the Crimson Shield, I respect that. However, I do have another position for you. Royal Engineer, second only to me in authority over the palace. You would oversee all maintenance, construction, and defense systems. Why me? There are Veltarans with much more experience. Because I trust you. Because you have proven your character beyond any doubt. And because the Empire needs to see that humans are valued, that they are equals. She smiled slightly. Also, you have intimate knowledge of how to turn a throne room into a fortress. That seems like a useful skill. Han Solo did not know what to say. A few months ago, he had been the lowest worker in the palace. Now, the Queen was offering him one of the highest positions in the Empire. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need to recover. But Han Solo, I want you to know something. Her voice grew softer. You saved my life. More than that, you saved my faith in what this empire can be. You reminded me that honor is not about words or traditions. It is about choices, about standing up when it matters. You would have done the same for me. Would I? She looked uncertain. I like to think so. But I have been raised in privilege my whole life. I have never been tested the way you were tested. Until that day, I did not know what I was capable of. She stood to leave. Rest, Han Solo. Recover. And when you are ready, we will talk about the future. After she left, Han Solo lay in bed thinking. The weight of 14 deaths still pressed on him, but maybe Nari and Ilovs were right. Maybe those people had died for something meaningful. Maybe their sacrifice would change things for the better. Over the next few weeks, visitors came constantly. Sung Ho hobbled in on crutches, grinning despite his injuries. Ji Woo brought him food from the palace kitchens, better than anything he had eaten before. The surviving humans who had fought beside him came to check on him, to share stories, to mourn together. But the most surprising visitors were Veltarans. Admiral Corvin, who had led the defense fleet, came to shake his hand and thank him personally. Engineers from across the Empire came to talk about defense systems and fortress design. Young Veltarans came asking for his advice, wanting to know how to be brave. "I don't understand this," Han Sol told Nari one day. "A few months ago, Veltarans would barely look at me. Now they treat me like I'm someone important." "You are important. You changed the conversation, Han Sol. For 300 years, Veltarans have believed they were superior to other species, that humans were weak and unimportant. You proved them wrong in the most dramatic way possible." She sat on the edge of his bed. "The Empire is changing. Humans are being accepted into positions that were closed to us before. The military is recruiting humans. Universities are offering scholarships. It's like someone opened a door that was locked for decades. One battle shouldn't change everything. But it did. Because everyone watched. Everyone saw the guards run and the humans stay. They can't ignore it. They can't pretend anymore that honor is about species or tradition. You force them to face the truth." Han Sol looked out the window at the gardens. Workers were planting new trees where the battle had destroyed the old ones. Veltarans and humans worked side by side, talking and laughing together. Maybe Nari was right. Maybe one battle could change everything. "Have you decided about the Queen's offer?" Nari asked. "I think so. I don't want to command the Crimson Shield. That should go to someone who knows military tactics. But Royal Engineer? That I can do. I can make this palace safer. I can make sure that if another attack comes, we're ready." "Good. The Empire needs you, Han Sol. More than you know." A month later, Han Sol stood in the throne room again. It had been completely rebuilt, with new crystal pillars and reinforced walls. But in one corner, they had left the old floor uncovered, the scorched, cracked, blood-stained floor where the battle had been fought. A memorial, so no one would forget. 14 names were carved into the wall beside it, in both human and Veltaran script. Deho, Bora, Taemin, and 11 others who had died protecting the throne. "They will never be forgotten," Ilov said, standing beside him. "I have declared this day a holiday across the Empire, the day of the Crimson Stand, when humans proved their courage to the galaxy." Han Sol touched Deho's name on the wall. "I wish they could have lived to see what they started." They did see it. In those final moments, they saw humans and Veltarans fighting together, dying together. They saw the old barriers breaking down. That is what they died for. 5 years passed. Han Sol stood on the balcony of his office, looking out over the crystalline palace gardens. The memorial garden for the fallen was complete now, with 14 trees planted in a circle around a central fountain. Each tree bore a plaque with a name and a brief story of who they had been before they became heroes. The palace itself had been transformed under his supervision. The old, neglected defense systems had been completely rebuilt. New turrets, better shields, reinforced walls. But more than that, the entire philosophy of palace security had changed. No longer did they rely on a small elite guard. Now, hundreds of defenders from dozens of species trained regularly, all of them volunteers who understood that protecting the throne meant protecting the heart of the Empire. "Royal Engineer Han Sol, you have visitors," his assistant said through the intercom. The assistant was a young Veltaran named Sylvan, eager and respectful in a way that still sometimes surprised Han Sol. "Send them in." The door opened, and a group of young humans entered, all wearing the uniforms of the Imperial Military Academy. They looked nervous and excited. "Royal Engineer, thank you for seeing us," their leader said, a young woman who reminded Han Sol of Ji Woo. "We're cadets at the Academy studying military history. We wanted to ask you about the Battle of the Throne Room. Han Sol smiled. There are dozens of reports and videos about that day. What more can I tell you? The reports tell us what happened, sir, but we want to know why. Why did you stay when everyone else ran? The psychologists say humans have a stronger fear response than Veltarans. You should have been the first to run, not the last to stay. Han Sol thought about his answer carefully. These young people would go on to serve in the military, to face their own moments of crisis. What they learned from him might save their lives someday. I stayed because running felt wrong, he said finally. That's all. I had run before, during Earth's civil wars, and I hated who I became. When the Silver Talons fled, I saw the same cowardice I had shown before. I couldn't do it again. But you must have been terrified. I was. Terror is not the opposite of courage. Courage is doing what's right even when you're terrified. He looked at each of them. You'll all face moments where you have to choose between safety and duty. When that happens, remember that the choice you make defines who you are. Not your species, not your training, not your rank, just your choice. The cadets thanked him and left, their faces thoughtful. Han Sol returned to his desk, where reports and blueprints waited. He had proposals for new defensive positions, supply chain improvements, and training protocols. The work never ended, but he found satisfaction in it. His communicator buzzed. Han Sol, the Queen requests your presence in the throne room. On my way. The throne room still gave him strange feelings. Despite all the repairs and changes, he could still see echoes of that terrible day. Sometimes at night, when he worked late, he thought he could hear the sounds of battle, ghosts maybe, or just memories. Elavs was waiting for him, but she was not alone. Admiral Corvin stood beside her, along with several other high-ranking military officers. They all wore serious expressions. Han Sol, thank you for coming, Ilav said. We have a situation that requires your expertise. What kind of situation? Admiral Corvin activated a holographic display. It showed a star map with several systems highlighted in red. The Krethik are moving again. After their defeat here, they retreated to rebuild, but intelligence suggests they're planning another attack, this time on the colony world of Telvar. Telvar has a population of 3 million, Ilav said. Most of them are civilians. If the Krethik attack with their full force, the colony's defenses will not hold. What do you need from me? We're sending a defensive fleet, but it will take weeks to arrive. In the meantime, we need someone to organize the colony's defenses, to prepare them for a siege. Someone who has experience turning impossible situations into survivable ones. Ilavs looked at him intently. We need you, Han Sol. He felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, I'm an engineer, not a general. The military has dozens of officers better qualified for this. They have the theory. You have the experience. You held this throne room for hours against overwhelming odds. You know how to defend when you're outnumbered and under-equipped. That's exactly what Telvar needs. I'll go with him, a voice said from the doorway. Sung Ho limped in, walking better now than he had a year ago, though he still used a cane. If Han Sol is organizing a defense, he'll need help. I volunteer. So do I, Jiwoo said, entering behind Sung Ho. The kitchen staff can handle things here for a few months. People need to eat, whether they're under siege or not. More people entered. Nari, Hyejin, walking without a limp now, a dozen other humans who had fought in the throne room. They all wore the same determined expression. You should have known we wouldn't let you go alone, Nari said, smiling. Han Sol looked at them. These people who had followed him into hell once before and were willing to do it again. Then he looked at Ilavs. If I do this, I need complete authority over the colony's defenses. No interference from local politicians or military officers who think they know better. Granted. And I need supplies, weapons, construction materials, food. Everything we'll need for a long siege. Already being loaded onto transport ships. And one more thing. Han Solo took a deep breath. If the colony falls, if we can't hold, you evacuate. You don't sacrifice the relief fleet trying to save us. Promise me that. Elovs hesitated. Han Solo, promise me. We both know that commanders make bad decisions trying to save heroes. If Telvar falls, you let it fall. The Empire is more important than any of us. I promise, Elovs said quietly, though I pray it does not come to that. 3 weeks later, Han Solo stood on the walls of Telvar Colony, watching the sun set over the frontier world. The colony was small, built around mining operations and farming. The people here were tough, used to hardship, but they were not warriors. He had spent those 3 weeks turning the colony into a fortress. Every able-bodied person had been trained in basic defense. Supply caches had been hidden throughout the settlement. Defensive positions had been built, weapons distributed, evacuation plans created. The work had been exhausting, but the colonists had responded with determination. "Do you think it will be enough?" Jiwoo asked, joining him on the wall. "I don't know. The Krethik are bringing a bigger force this time. They want revenge for what happened at the palace." He looked at the colonists below, families preparing for the worst. "But we'll make them pay for every inch of ground. That's all we can do." Just like the throne room. Just like the throne room. The Krethik arrived 2 days later. Their ships darkened the sky, and their warriors landed like a black wave washing over the colony's outer defenses. But this time, Han Solo was ready. The battle lasted 6 days. 6 days of constant fighting, of desperate last stands, of ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. The colonists fought with everything they had, inspired by the humans who had held the throne room. Children carried ammunition. Elderly farmers operated weapons. Miners used their equipment to collapse tunnels on advancing Krethik. Han Solo was everywhere, directing the defense, plugging gaps in the line, encouraging people when they wanted to give up. Sung Ho commanded the eastern wall. Jiwoo kept the defenders fed and treated the wounded. Nari ran the communications, coordinating between defensive positions. They lost ground slowly, falling back to prepared positions, making the Krethik pay for every building and street. The colony was being destroyed, but the people were surviving. On the 6th day, the Veltaran relief fleet arrived. The Krethik, finding themselves trapped between the fleet and the colony's defenders, retreated in disorder. The siege was over. Han Solo stood in the ruins of the colony center, exhausted and covered in dust. The colonists were cheering, celebrating their survival, but he felt only a deep weariness. "We lost 40 people, Nari reported, her voice heavy, "but 3 million survived. You saved them, Han Solo." "We saved them, all of us together." Admiral Corvin found him later, surveying the damage. "Remarkable. The Krethik had 5 times the force that attacked the palace, yet you held. How?" "The people here believed they could win. They had heard about the throne room, about humans standing against impossible odds. They thought if we could do it, they could do it. Belief is a weapon, Admiral. Sometimes the most powerful one." News of the defense of Telvar spread across the Empire even faster than the story of the throne room. Humans were no longer seen as the weak newcomers. They were recognized as fierce defenders, as people who would stand and fight when others might run. The Empire's culture shifted. The old emphasis on bloodline and tradition gave way to merit and character. Universities recruited from all species equally. The military became more diverse. Laws were passed ensuring equal treatment for all citizens, regardless of species. 10 years after the Battle of the Throne Room, Han Solo stood once again in the Memorial Garden. He was older now, with gray in his hair and scars that ached on cold days. But he was content. Ilovs joined him, as she often did these days. Their friendship had grown over the years, built on shared trauma and mutual respect. "I've been thinking about legacy," she said, watching the trees sway in the breeze. "What we leave behind when we're gone. Having regrets about dissolving the Silver Talons? No, that was necessary. But I wonder if we've built something better. The Crimson Shield has defended this palace from 3 attacks in the last decade. They've never run. Never even considered it. Because you chose them for character instead of bloodline. Because they understand that their oath means something. Because you showed them what courage looks like." She turned to face him. "Han Sol, I want to tell you something. The genetic codes the Krethik were after, the ones that could control the fleet. I destroyed them during the battle. I used the chaos to erase them from my neural structure." Han Sol stared at her. "Why?" "Because that kind of power should not exist. One person should not be able to control an entire fleet. What if I had been captured? What if some future queen was corrupted?" She smiled sadly. "You taught me that true strength is not about controlling others. It's about inspiring them to be better. What does this mean for the Empire?" "It means we're more democratic now. Fleet command is distributed among many officers. No single point of failure. It's messier, slower, but safer." She looked at the memorial. "Those 14 humans died protecting a system that concentrated too much power in one person. I owed it to them to build something better." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. "Do you ever regret it?" Ilovs asked. "Staying that day? Your life would have been simpler if you had run." Han Sol thought about it. He thought about Wu Jin, about the bridge, about all the guilt he had carried for years. He thought about the 14 names on the wall, the lives lost because they had followed his example. But he also thought about the Empire now, more just and equal than it had been. About the humans who had found respect and opportunity. About the 3 million people on Telvar who were alive because of the courage learned in a throne room. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it. Running was easy. Standing was hard. But hard things are usually worth doing." Ilovs touched his shoulder, that gesture of respect from her people. "They asked you once why you stayed when wisdom demanded you run. I remember. I said running was easy, and I was done taking the easy path. That answer changed an empire, Han Sol. Never forget that." As they walked back toward the palace, Han Sol looked up at the building that had become his home. The crystalline palace stood tall and beautiful, its walls reinforced, but its spirit transformed. It was no longer a monument to tradition and bloodline. It had become a symbol of courage, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when the moment demanded it. The guards at the entrance saluted as they passed. They were part of the Crimson Shield now, chosen from a dozen species, each one tested and proven. They wore red armor in honor of the humans who had bled defending this palace. "What will you do next?" Ilovs asked. "Keep working. There are always defenses to improve, people to train, systems to maintain. The work never ends." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's good work, meaningful work." He smiled. "Besides, someone has to make sure that if the Krethik come back, we're ready. They will come back eventually, they always do. Then we'll be here waiting, together." Years later, when historians wrote about the transformation of the Veltaran Empire, they always began with the Battle of the Throne Room. They wrote about the Silver Talons who ran and the humans who stayed. They wrote about courage and character, about how one maintenance worker's choice had changed the course of history, but they also wrote about what came after, about the empire that built itself on merit instead of bloodline, about the culture that valued courage over tradition, about the alliance between humans and Veltarans that became a model for the entire galaxy. And when people asked how such massive change happened so quickly, the answer was always the same. It started with one man who refused to run, who stood when wisdom said he should flee, who chose the hard path because it was right, not because it was easy. It started with Han Solo, the maintenance worker who became a hero not because he was special, but because he made a choice. And that choice inspired others to make the same choice, again and again, until an entire empire was transformed. In the end, that was his legacy. Not the battles won or the defenses built, but the simple truth he had proven to the galaxy. Sometimes, the most ordinary people do the most extraordinary things, not because they are fearless or powerful or destined for greatness, but because when the moment comes, when everyone else is running, they choose to stand. And that choice, that single moment of courage, can change everything.